The following show features stories from the ADRA network. ADRA is the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, a ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We strive to walk in the footsteps of Jesus and share God's love and compassion to people in every corner of the world. Each story you see in this series represents our mission to change the world one life at a time. To learn more, please visit us online at adra.ca.
The Philippines is one of the hardest hit areas in the world of natural disasters.
The level of damage, the level of devastation that's been brought by this typhoon is like unprecedented.
So we lost 856 pump boats during Yolanda.
Just imagine the means that you have to live suddenly gets wiped out.
How does that community recover? How do we help the community in the long term to restore itself?
It is really important that we put more emphasis on preparedness, more emphasis on disaster risk reduction, so that over time, communities are better prepared.
They don't need a handout. They need collaboration and support that will allow them to get back on their feet and get back to taking care of themselves.
It's sharing the resources that we have and recognizing that the local people in the Philippines have tremendous resources themselves.
They have a faith that is stronger than any storm, a faith that they will be taken care of, that God is good.
We know that disasters will continue to come, but if we can at least do a little bit to make people less vulnerable, I think that is a great thing that we can do.
You see something in their spirit. Even in the face of the next inevitable disaster, they push on. This world of ours is more beautiful, more complicated, and more inspiring than we could ever imagine. My name is Sanjay, and this is the story of a journey with ADRA to serve a hurting world. I've spent the last 6 months seeing a side of our planet that not many people get to see, witnessing the most incredible challenges and the most extraordinary hope. Together, we've got a chance to impact the world in a whole new way. This is A Closer Walk.
Breaking news out of the region this hour is one of the strongest storms
to ever make landfall in recorded history has hit the Philippines.
Super Typhoon Haiyan is already the strongest tropical storm we've seen anywhere.
Super Typhoon Haiyan raced across the Philippine Islands, kicking waves up to 19 feet high, winds up to 195 miles per hour.
The onslaught of water caused by the low pressure and the extremely high winds just sweeping into the town of Hernani on the island of Samar.
We're looking at the aftermath of one of the strongest storms ever to tear across the ocean and smash into land.
Tacloban has been flattened.
On November 8 of 2013, Typhoon Haiyan, or Yolanda as the locals here call it, left more than 6,000 people dead, thousands missing, and as many as 4 million people homeless and displaced. Almost 9 months after the deadly storm made landfall, small villages along the coast are still trying to recover from the devastation.
That's supposed to be no-build zone.
Juancho Alvarez is the mayor of Ahoy, Iloilo, one of the areas hardest hit by the storm.
What direction did the water come from?
It came from here. So, and there used to be houses here.
All throughout here?
From here and from there used to be houses. And when the storm surge came, it was all destroyed.
When you look at the scale of disasters, they have category 1 to 5. So this one was category 5. Just to give you a perspective, that is about winds at the speed of maybe 250 to 280 kilometers an hour.
We get a lot of storms every year. We get a lot of disasters every year, man-made and natural disasters. But the level of damage, the level of devastation that has been brought by this typhoon is like unprecedented.
Have you experienced anything like this before?
I've been living here for almost 35 years, 40 years, and we've been experiencing typhoons, signal number 2 typhoons, 100, 150 kilometers per hour. But this one is the first time that more than 300 kilometers typhoon hit our town.
So it was almost twice as strong as all the other ones that you had encountered before.
The Philippines is the third most disaster-prone country on the planet. The over 7,000 islands sit totally exposed at the edge of the western Pacific Ocean and endure an almost constant barrage of tropical storms. The storm itself was not a surprise, but the unprecedented intensity of it was more than anyone could have imagined.
What people say is that the word that was used when the message went out, to just warn people that a typhoon was coming, was just a big rain, not so much a typhoon or a mega typhoon. So people were expecting, a very big rain with a lot of wind and so on, but not really a typhoon of that size. And a typhoon of that size hasn't really hit the Philippines for many years, and people were not expecting that.
The effect is really massive. You're talking of 3 regions across the Visayas Islands. Almost 1 million households got affected.
So what we see here and the devastation that we see here, this is how it is in most of your district, yeah.
Of the 11,000 families or households, we have more than 10,200 that their houses were totally and partially damaged.
In emergencies, often we think of the short-term crisis. Let's send some bedding in there, let's send a food container in there, let's send something else. But there is a long-term rebuild, and after a severe storm event like the Philippines, you can't just go in and leave after 6 months or 3 months. You've got to be there in the long term.
For a lot of the Filipino families living in the coastal barangays, fishing is their primary source of survival. It is not only their main source of food, it is also their livelihood and only source of income. For these families who are already living far below the poverty line, the boat they fish with is key to their survival.
So we lost 856 pump boats during Yolanda.
And so that's 856 families that can't do what they do to earn a living. With that many boats being destroyed, where did the fishermen go? How did they get back on their feet?
This is from a hand-to-mouth subsistence. If they can't go fishing, they don't have something to eat.
Families in the small fishing villages or barangays along the east coast of the Philippine Islands are dependent on fishing for their survival. With many of the fishing boats destroyed in Typhoon Haiyan, these communities struggle to get back on their feet, having lost not only their main source of food, but also their main source of income.
These people, for a period of 2 months, 3 months, they depended on the government for them for their own consumption. They were waiting for food relief for at least 3 months because they don't have their boats to catch fish. They don't have their nets, their fishing gears to catch something to eat. Just imagine the means that you have to live one day at a time suddenly gets wiped out. You don't know what to do tomorrow, or the day after, or the week after.
After that first crisis, when the TV crews are gone and, you know, the international aid is beginning to withdraw, how does that community recover? What about the fishing industry that's been destroyed? How do they recover, both in terms of their boats and their nets and so forth? How do we help the community in the long term to restore itself? And how do we help the families restore their own sort of livelihoods and give them the resources to recover with their own dignity that makes them feel like they're in control of their own destiny?
One of the most important parts of the recovery process after a storm like Haiyan is getting people their livelihoods back. Emergency handouts are often a necessary first step, but ultimately the only thing that will ensure survival is getting people back into a position where they can take care of themselves, getting them into boats and back on the water.
Most of them don't have any land. They live right on the shore. That's where they've lived for years. And what they know to do is to go fishing. They just have their boats, they have their fishing nets, off they go.
Each boat doesn't only cater one family or one household, because at some point it's being shared by father and son, and the son already has its own family, but doesn't have the capacity, the means to have his own boat because he's starting a new family. And also at some point, it's also being shared by cousins or even neighbors. So you're saying like 1, 2, 3 households in one boat. So when that certain boat gets damaged, we're not only talking here of one household getting affected, we're talking over here 3 households. So the direct effect, if we're going to compute it, is for one boat, 15 individuals at the very least. 3 households, the average of 5 members for each household. So that's going to be 15 individuals for just one boat. All of them are dependent on that one.
But having so many families dependent on one boat also means that when a boat is replaced, that many more people are back to taking care of themselves. Another way that people are recovering is with cash for work programs. People affected by the storm are paid to help replace or rebuild the things that have been destroyed. Gabe is responsible for running the Cash for Work program here. And he explained to me why these programs are so important and took me to where some of the work was being done.
This is one of the many activities resulted from the Cash for Work program. This is one of the fishing gears that we are bringing back to them. This is what they call locally as crab pots. This is being used to catch crabs. So just going to place a bait inside. They drop this in the ocean and the crabs get inside these little cages. Once the crab gets in, it won't be able to go out. So that's simple. Using these wires, this indigenous material, they earn their living.
Now these are people that were actually affected by the typhoon directly.
Yes. So these materials goes back to them on top of the salary that we will be giving to them daily.
How important are these traps to these people?
But for them, they're ultimately reliant to these crab pots, basically. Their daily living, their daily consumption is totally dependent. If they don't have this, they don't have anything else.
So it's not a matter of convenience, it's a matter of survival.
They don't have anything else aside from fishing. So that's it. They're mainly dependent on these things.
Cesar Chavez has been a fisherman his whole life. He lost his boat and fishing nets in the storm, but with the help of the disaster relief program, he was able to replace his boat and get back out on the water. Rebuilding your life after a devastating storm like Haiyan doesn't happen overnight. Caesar is back to making just enough money to support his wife and 3 children for their daily needs, but there isn't money left over to make the necessary repairs to the parts of his house damaged in the storm. They don't have enough money to move. They don't have enough money to fix their house. I can't imagine how vulnerable they must feel knowing the next storm is inevitable.
So the whole roof is gone.
Yes.
Cesar Chavez is a fisherman whose boat was destroyed by Typhoon Haiyan. Replacing his boat was the first step in the recovery process, but he's still a long way from having life be back to normal. He took me to the house that he shares with his wife and 3 children. I was shocked at how much damage remained even 9 months after the storm. Joining us was Chrissy Pauline, one of the ADRA field officers who helps to run the recovery efforts in this area. She knows how common it is for the recovery process to take a long time, and how hard it can be for families who were already barely getting by to overcome a whole new set of challenges.
The whole roof is gone.
Yes.
So it was blown away by the wind. And what was up here? Was these bedrooms or?
Yes, sleeping area.
So the children? And all of their things just blew away.
Yes. We used to go over here.
And the children were underneath right there.
Walking through the house and looking at all the damage from the storm, I could see how devastating it would be if another storm were to hit before they finished making all their repairs. In some ways, helping people prepare for the next inevitable storm is the most important part of the recovery process. The manpower necessary to recover from the storm already exists within these communities. What's necessary is access to resources and expertise.
While they are already being assisted, to recover their immediate needs and livelihoods, they're already going through a very interesting sort of training and program to help them become better prepared for the future disasters that will come. It is really important that we put more emphasis on preparedness, more emphasis on disaster risk reduction, so that over time, communities are better prepared, so we are less vulnerable.
This construction class is one of the many ways that the communities are becoming better prepared. More than just basic building skills, they are learning about techniques that will make the homes they build more structurally sound and able to withstand the strong winds of a storm like Haiyan.
How do those communities build their own resilience is not just about recovering from this event, but if you're in the Philippines, you know that there's another storm. The Philippines is one of the most hardest hit areas in the world of natural disasters. And so how do you not just help them to recover from this event, but how do you build a resilience within that community that if they were to face another superstorm, or if they were to face an earthquake or something else, that actually made them more prepared, so that you can't stop the natural event, but the community through preparation can become more resilient to be able to withstand those events.
Another way to try and prepare is to relocate people to areas that may be less vulnerable, but for most of the families along the coast whose only source of food and income is from fishing, being anywhere far from the ocean is just not possible.
If they don't stay there and they don't go fishing, what are they going to live on? Do they want to move? Yes, okay, but where? Where could they move that they would still be able to sustain their livelihoods? Because if you just move them to a higher ground, but then, they don't know what else to do. I mean, they're still gonna be extremely poor, and they'll probably find a way to get back to the coastal area.
And in a storm as intense as Haiyan, there was almost nowhere that was safe. Gabe took me to a village far from the reach of the tidal surge, where the damage from wind was just as devastating, especially since most of the homes in this small farming community are made from timber and sheet metal. The wind was so strong that the house he showed me had completely blown away.
As you can see here, they have this temporary house wherein they used some of the salvaged materials.
Once the temporary house is built, they can start work on the new home. Construction on these new homes involves improved techniques that will help these houses stand up to even the strongest typhoon winds.
So, engineer, unsa atong mga gipang dugang bali diri nga mga natay gipang dugang nga mga blocks kay atong tantaw nga modular standards. Okay. So what he's saying is we added all those, as you can see, those blocks over there.
So what are some of the dangers of building back these homes without those added protection and safety measures?
There's this great chance it's going to be a waste of life.
It is staggering to think of the number of people who die in natural disasters because they lack the basic resources that can save lives.
And it seems like they're pretty simple changes, but it makes a lot of difference.
A lot of difference. Yeah, totally. Because having, as you can see, if you're not do any support, it will just easily get blown away. But adding those little things make the difference.
Gabe introduced me to Mary Jane, who survived the storm by fleeing the house with her husband and 5 children. She showed us into the temporary shelter where they have all been living since the storm.
So what would happen to this shelter here if another storm came through?
May Yolanda nga kwan. Di ko ma-explain ang magliwat naman liwat.
She's saying that if the same thing is going to happen, she really don't know, especially staying in this place. Just really don't know what's going to happen with this house once another typhoon strong as Yolanda will come.
Mary Jane and her husband John are working to finish their new home before another major storm hits. With help from local builders and ADRA's disaster recovery team, they are following a new model of construction and building a home that is better prepared for the next typhoon.
The community can become more resilient, and that's part of a long-term strategy that you have to build with the community. So you've got to go in with a long-term view of a long relationship that you're going to build with those people, that builds up trust, that builds up a sense of empowerment, that they can depend upon you and know that you're there to help them in the long term.
And part of building a relationship with the community means listening to their needs and really relying on them as the best source of information about what kinds of programs will be most useful.
Now, we don't parachute in a community and say, you've got to have this, you've got to have, that's it, that's what we perceive you need to have. It's a partnership, and it is really community-driven.
You know, I think that part of responding to the disasters is a team approach. So, you know, it's a combination of local knowledge, it's a combination of maybe some engineering techniques that you can bring in. It's a combination of just giving them the resources to be able to build their buildings in a more sustainable way so that they're not having to scrounge around and find and build out of what they can find left in the rubble, but they can actually restore something which is more solid and is much more resilient into the future as well. And that to me is about the partnership, you know, it's sharing the resources that we have and recognizing that the local people in the Philippines have tremendous resources themselves.
It's incredible to see how successful the recovery programs are at helping people get back to their livelihoods. As the response to disasters evolves and becomes more effective, the people who were once the most vulnerable begin to see a brighter and more sustainable future. Recovery from a disaster can be a long and complex process. It often involves a lot of organizations coordinating on a massive scale. But the most valuable resources in the recovery from any disaster are the people of the community that it affects. They don't need a handout. They need collaboration and support that will allow them to get back on their feet and get back to taking care of themselves.
Yeah, I believe, you know, as God's creatures, we were all created with this sort of sense for humanity, with this, you know, passion to help out people.
Every morning in villages along the coast of the Philippine Islands, fishermen start their day. There's a simplicity to their life, a calmness to the ritual that has been passed down through the generations. It's impressive to watch the determination with which they press on, knowing the incredible challenges they face. You see something in their spirit, some optimism that pushes them forward. Even in the face of the next inevitable disaster, they push on. They have a faith that is stronger than any storm, a faith that they will be taken care of, that they will be provided for. That God is good all the time.
When I came here, when I came to this island, I saw the devastation. I saw what happened to my people. You just have to be strong. You don't have anything. You don't have anything to hold on to, but just your faith. You just have to believe that you can help. You just have to believe that there's someone, there's God helping you, helping these people to recover.
What we have, what we do, shouldn't be just for ourselves. It should be, you know, towards others. We know that, you know, disasters will continue to come. We know that we're still gonna, you know, have issues, problems, conflicts, and so on. But if we can at least do a little bit to minimize that, to make people less vulnerable, I think that is a great thing that we can do.